Hello everybody, and welcome to the Rebooted Reviews. Today, I will be going over the entire set year of 2015. I will be going over sets 707-78 all the way through 707-95. This is 18 sets in all. Now this entire year of sets will cost you $280. So, just fair warning. But I personally think it's worth it. I will only be discussing the sets. Only the sets. Just those. No polybag, no event exclusive, none of those things. None of them. Now, as many of you know, there are a lot of things that carried over from G1 into G2. Now, obviously, 6 main Toa, Tahu, Kopaka, Liwa, Gali, Onua, and POWAAH. The term Toa itself, it's actually the only specialized term of this year. Makuta returns. The Mask of Time, I'm not sure if it looks like this. Probably doesn't. Though it did make cameos in the animations like this. Like this shape of it. So 5 of the 6 original elements are still here. The only difference is that air is swapped out for jungle. And some people are pretty mad about that, but that personally doesn't bother me too much. Because from a non-biased, non-fan perspective, it makes more sense for jungle to be green than air. I think it works. A dual functionality, where some of the Toa actually use their same dual weapon function as their 2002 variants. Now, for an example here, I'm just going to use Tahu, Master of Fire. So as you can see, oh boy, as you can see, he just fell over. As you can see, he has a lava surfboard right here. So, very similar to toa+nuva. Let me just take him out here. What he can do is he can take this lava surfboard, which actually goes on his feet, but he can take that lava surfboard. He can take this part off, put it on the end, split it apart, a little bit like Lacan's board in that aspect, and he can hold the blades like so. Very similar to Lacan's dual function, very similar to his 2002 form's dual function, which was a lot more simple. It was just like that, and then you take it off the foot and you make it into some pretty awesome swords. So yeah, a lot of resemblance in the dual weapon functionalities. So Tahu can take a lava board and turn it into swords. Liwa can do something very similar to his O2 version. Onua can turn his hammer into turbo shovelers. Kopaka can turn his shield into skis, again, very reminiscent of his O2 form. Gali can make flippers with her elemental trident, similar to her O2 form. POWAAH's is not similar at all. He takes his boomerangs and puts them on his feet, and he can fly around and stuff. It's always great. I really like the dual functions for this year, and I really liked them on the Nuva, so I'm glad they included that. Gear functions return. This actually started with the Mata, as we all know. These were also used on the Nuva. So on the Nuva it was like this. But unfortunately the arms always did just kind of flop around like that. But on these guys you can do the gear function, but it will actually stay in whatever position you put it in. And this is thanks to some very ingenious engineering back here. Particularly the use of these friction gears. You can see right there. They're very useful parts, and they are responsible for the Toa having good posability and good function. Sometimes it doesn't work as well though. For instance, Onua, his has so much friction that sometimes it's very difficult to do his function. So keep that in mind. It's a little less free, but they tried to get the best of both of the worlds of form and function in there, and I think they did as best as they could. Obviously they of course did try and fix it with the Nuva, but you couldn't use the function at all, so it was either one or the other. With these guys, you can have them both at the same time. Sometimes it does get in the way of posing, like you gotta move the arm and it moves the gear function instead of the ball joint. Use of blasters returns. They use these new 6 shooters, which are not exclusive to Bionicle. They're using them in many themes. So what you do, you have a gear or something to turn, and you just fire them off. They're very fun. They do include 6 extra, aside from the ones that are actually in the launcher, and you do lose them quite easily, so it's very fortunate that they did include them. It's pretty fun. If you're trying not to lose them, I wouldn't recommend shooting it at all unless you're shooting it into like a canister or something, or some other container. So shoot at your own risk. They did bring back masks and eye stalks, which were lacking in Hero Factory. The masks attach these 2 little nubs, I guess, on the ear holes, and they just slide on very well. They don't come off as easily as, say, the Mata ones, where you just flick it and come right off. It's very secure, definitely conducive to the mask launching function. The face, I have to say, looks a lot better this time around, because they didn't use a peg hole, so they don't have this weird hole mouth. They actually have a very nice neutral expression that, depending on the eyes, can either look peaceful or angry, and it looks fairly determined. I have to say that the eye stalks are, for the Mata and the Metru, were a lot more soulful looking than these and had better light piping, because the main source of the light piping is from the top part of the eye stalk rather than the back part. So people like Tahu, you can barely see his eye color in most lights. When I had him in the foreground here, you could see his eyes pretty well though. So it just depends on the lighting. They also brought back the Gurak staff piece, which is used on POWAAH, and he uses this as his alternate weapon in his function. Have it back here, and it stores on his back. Whereas POWAAH uses it for the tip of his spear right here. So that's pretty cool. Final thing that carried over is the use of golden masks. Well, actually mask hunting in general. This year, the Toa hunt for their golden masks. They also hunt for the Mask of Creation. The golden masks look pretty good on most of the Toa. POWAAH, it probably looks the worst because he has so much gold on top of him. Here, here, and here. That the white mask breaks it up really well, and you take it away, and it just doesn't work. So a little unfortunate, but they include it in the set, so you don't have to go hunting like you did in early 2002 for the Golden Kanuhi. And I believe that's about it for everything that carried over. Now, as far as recolors and new molds go, there's all kinds of recolors. I mean, all kinds of recolors. I mean, you got all kinds of parts recolored in all kinds of colors. And they even recolored the torso piece, which I don't think they've done since 2011, aka the debut of CCBS. That's really cool. But there's new masks, heads, eye stalks, which are in every set except for Loss. He does have a mask. There's a gearbox, and all 6 Toa have gearboxes. Akimu has a gearbox, Skull Slicer has a gearbox, Skull Grinder has a gearbox. Skull Warrior had a gearbox. There is the new 2-piece stud shooter. There's 2 new add-ons. The new add-ons are this piece, which resembles Toa Mata torso. It's really great. I quite like it. It's on pretty much every set of the Winter Wave, and it's obviously included with Akimu. I think the only exceptions of the Winter Wave are Korgo, because she has an unorthodox design, and Loss, because he's not a good guy set. Not that kind of good guy set. all of the skull villains have this add-on, which is very spooky. It's great. Really like it. It definitely fits with their theme of being spooky. Speaking of the add-ons on the skull villains have a new kind of bone piece, a new bone piece mold, which again, haven't gotten any new bone piece molds since 2011. So this one is, well, supposed to be a bone. So it's really great. I quite like it. Now, on some of the sets, like Skull Slicer, it's not necessarily anatomically correct, but I don't think it's as much of an issue. Of course, there's a new ribcage piece on all the skull villains. Let's see. Have Skull Basher be the example. So it's really great. Again, pulls off that skull vibe very well. Of course, there's the Skull Spider leg piece. This was actually introduced in Bionicle, though it has been used in other themes, specifically the Star Wars buildable figures. Looks like that. It's kind of like a Hero Factory claw piece, except it's jagged at the end and doesn't look as perfect, I guess you could say, as the Hero Factory one does. It definitely fits with the Skull Spiders. As far as the masks and eye stalks go, I mentioned them earlier, but there is about 11 new mask molds. You have the 6 Toa masks, the Protector mask, the 2 different Skull Villain masks, the Skull Spider mask, and the Mask of Creation. So, that's 11 new masks, not counting different colors, just different molds. All of the good guys, they're brightly colored, they're elemental, they look very tribal with the chest plate. The bad guys, they're undead with all the bones and stuff, except for Lost, of course. Very, very spooky. You got the skulls, the gunmetal, the silver. They have a lot more dark colors. Now, Kimu, for the most part, is the exception to the rule. He looks very regal and important with this add-on. He has gold and translite blue, and this color scheme works perfectly for him. It is great, and he looks great with the Mask of Creation. It really brings out like that regal, royal, almost like a king look for him with the kind of crown parts on him. It's really cool. You can definitely tell which one is the good guy, which one's the bad guy, and who is important and you need to take notice of. Overall, I think that's great. Now, as far as the articulation goes, this is the highest articulation standard for a wave or year of Bionicle ever. Every single set has the same, I guess you call it the standard points of articulation. I'll use POWAAH. There's one in the neck, one in his shoulder, one in his elbow, one in his wrist, one in the ankle, one in the knee, one in the hip. Those are the 11 points of articulation that you come to expect. Now, there are a few exceptions to this rule of articulation, particularly Narmodo, the Protector of Fire, and Isotor, the Protector of Ice. Without any modifications, they only have 1 point of articulation in their arms. Liwa's is a bit restricted for his neck, again, if he's not modified. And Kulsa and Onua each feature an extra bone in their necks, so that means they each have an extra point of articulation in their necks. But Lost and Skull Scorpio are kind of different because they're not humanoid builds. I don't have Scorpio assembled, so I can't show him. But Lost just has 1 in each leg, 1 in his head, and then these 2 right here for his mouth. He also has some armor plates on the side that you can move. Skull Scorpio did a little bit better with articulation, but his tail was kind of lacking. But, you know, at least they have some articulation. The Rocky from 01 were very static. They had no articulation other than their functions, so you couldn't do anything with them. They were just stuck. Construction. These sets definitely a lot more complex. Let's take, for instance, let me grab a Hero Factory set here. Let's take Bulk. Now, Bulk is a pretty typical Hero Factory set. He has a helmet, hero core. Let's compare him to toa+nuva. he has a function. He isn't doing so well on articulation as he is, but he has 2 in his legs, 2 in his arms, none in the head, although I have modified him so he can do that. But you know, he's fun. Tahu, Master of Fire. Now he has a bunch of articulation. He has a function. Now, something I should have mentioned is that the HF sets, they're flat. Very, very flat. Most people do not have that flat of torsos. And it makes them look very unarmored. And most of them don't have back armor. Now, these sets, they do have back armor. And they do have something on their backs that helps fill them out. You see, Tahu looks a lot more full. It looks like he's actually eating his meals, which is the case for this Tahu. But he didn't really pull off articulation and function at the same time. The Metru did very good with this, but they didn't do it quite so well as 2015 did. 2015 pulls it off the best, in my opinion. Now, some people would disagree because the function is less fun or something, but I personally disagree because I don't have G1er nostalgia blindness, so I think these sets are good. Now, the Protectors actually have higher parts counts than most of the Toa, actually. You see, toa+nuva, 36 pieces. I believe the average parts count for a Protector was like 60 pieces. Now this mainly goes into their weapons, but still, that's a lot of parts. There's definitely an improvement in the area of parts counts. And most of the Toa have anywhere from, I'd say, like 65 up to 100 pieces. So they have definitely gotten more complex, and they still resemble their G1 selves. I really like the mask resemblance, although Liwa's is a bit far-fetched. It's advanced the farthest from his original. Again, back to Loss and Skull Scorpio. They were meant to be like the G1 Rahi. They had a function, and actually they don't do much else. And that's the flaw that they inherit from the G1 Rahi. They're basically a walking function. That was the big problem with the G1 Rahi. But at least these guys have some articulation, however minuscule it is. Oh boy, functions. There's functions everywhere. Like seriously. The Mask Maker vs. Skull Grinder set in general is a good example of all of the functions and play feature that came into play this year. Get it? Came into play. Just Lego toys, whatever. Obviously, your function. Some sets had 1 arm, some sets had 2. All the sets had a function where you could just pop off the mask using the new eye star. Like that. The Protectors and Akimu and Skull Warrior all had the blaster function, which I demonstrated earlier. Some of them have spinning weapons, particularly Akimu, Isotor, and Corgo. There's also conflict in the box. Now there's a more balanced example right here because you have Akimu. He's powerful, more powerful than a Protector, and he's going up against Skull Grinder, who is at least as powerful as a Toa, and it's a more balanced fight, even though the height difference. Each of the Toa and Protectors came with a Skull Spider. In the case of the Protectors would try and protect the villagers from the Skull Spider. The Skull Spider could kill and control, and then someone would have to come along and free them. And this is great because it doesn't mean you have to get a good guy and a bad guy set in order to have a good time, which is very good if you're on a tight budget or something like that. You just get a $10 set and you got a good guy, and you got a little bad guy. In the case of the Toa, I guess the Skull Spiders are trying to prevent them from getting their golden masks, and again, they could take control and stuff. And I personally believe that all of these functions are integrated with very little impact on the look of the set, even though Lost and Skull Scorpio's functions do make certain parts of them look a little strange. For instance, on Lost's back, there is this very obvious lever, and it doesn't really go so well with the rest of his body. And Skull Scorpio's tail look very out of place and technicky and clunky, but other than that, they don't hinder articulation, again, because they do stay in place, as long as you don't have a heavy weapon like Kalta. That's really good. I'm very happy that they were able to do that. Let's talk about character dynamics. Now, I already kind of went over this earlier, all of these, but I'm just going to recap it again and use an example. Gali and Kivoda. So the thing going on with the master and protector dynamic is that each of them have the same elemental feel. You can see Gali, it looks like she's made of water. She's got trans, just all over the place. Same thing with Kivoda. He's got trans, heck, trans right there, just trans everywhere. And they both pull off the same elemental feel. In fact, a lot of the time, the protector's colors make a lot more sense when paired with the Toa. See, it would make no sense on Kivoda for him to have yellow turbines. But when you look at Gali, Gali has these yellow parts on her weapon, she has yellow gears, she has yellow on her breastplate printing. When you pair the Toa with the protector, it really brings out the best of both of them. Team dynamics. The Toa, the protectors, and the skull villains, they all manage in their own groups to look cohesive and unique, even though they all have similarities. All of the Toa have printed chest pieces, all the skull villains have printed chest pieces. The protectors have the same masks, all the skull villains have the ribcage piece and transient orange, they all have printed chest pieces, and they all have skulls and bones. Loss and the skull spiders don't really share as much of these things because Loss was still living. As far as we know, the skull spiders were still living, and they don't feature bones or anything. The thing about Kimu, though, is that he doesn't really fit with any group. Like, you put him with Toa, he's shorter, but he still looks powerful. You pair him with a protector, and the protectors, they look kind of weak compared to him, and they don't look as important as he does. He really looks like he's large and in charge when compared to each of these two groups, and he really looks like someone that the villains do not want to mess with. Even like compared to Tahu and Kopaka, who are twice as tall as he is, he still looks like you should pay attention to him, because he's a Kino, What else do I have to say? Overall, I think this year was really, really good. The Toa and the Protectors are all great sets, and their flaws can be easily fixed. Lewa's neck articulation can be fixed by moving the gearbox down a peg. Narmoto and Isotor can easily get an extra point of articulation in their arms due to their simple nature. And of course, even though he's not a Toa and Protector, Kalta and his floppy arms can be easily fixed by putting some gears in his armpit sockets. Loss, he's pretty good. He's a little bit lacking in articulation, and that makes him pretty static, but his function is really fun, and he has a lot of great pieces. He actually has more parts than Onua, and Onua is a $20 set. So, keep that in mind. Skull villains are a little disappointing, particularly Skull Slicer and Skull Scorpio. Basher and Warrior are pretty much perfect. I would definitely recommend getting them if you can only buy a few of the Skull villains. And the big set of the year, Mask Maker vs. Skull Grinder, is really, really good. You got a ton of pieces, the Mask of Creation, for crying out loud, and Akinu, who is one of the best figures of the year, if not the best. Kalta, he's pretty good, and his big flaw can be easily fixed. It's definitely great that they brought back gears and projectiles. The former is reminiscent of 01 through 05, and the latter, which is reminiscent of 06 through 09. This year is one of the best, if not the best, years in Bionicle's history. It combines all the great aspects from all different years of Bionicle, inserts CCBS with maximum effectiveness for the most part, and it looks like next year is going to be even better, and I cannot wait to see what LEGO has in store for us next. But what did you guys think of this year? Did you love it? Hate it? Are you hyped for 2016? I know I am. What do you think about the use of CCBS in Bionicle? What's your favorite set? What's your least favorite set?